What's up, you guys? This is Devin with Century FX Studios TV, back with another video, and today we're talking about the Canon 135mm EF f2 lens. This lens is pretty old, but this lens was one of the sharpest known L lenses ever made. And it's a prime lens, which means it doesn't zoom in or zoom out, and it has a wide aperture of f2, which means it lets a lot of light in. For those of you who don't know the benefits of letting a lot of light into your camera, that it expands our exposure triangle. That means we have faster shutter speeds at lower ISO, giving you a lot less noise, shallow depth of field, and beautiful images all the way around, better color accuracy, so on and so forth. Check out what we got.
All right, guys, we're back in Lightroom with the image quality test of the 135mm f2. We're going to go right in the middle of the image to see exactly what they're talking about, with it being one of the sharpest lenses from the EF days. And wow, at 100%, this lens looks really clean. Little to no chromatic aberration, and it's pretty much one of the sharpest EF glasses on the market. And it's a prime lens. It's going to be sharper than your average zoom lens, especially a lot of these new RFL lenses where they're just making them to be corrected. And if you look in the corner here, it is nice and clean. I wouldn't mind having this lens on my own. Like this lens is clean. Like, I'm not thinking about shooting against contrasting edges so much. It might flare, but it's not going to show me a lot of that chromatic aberration. Let's stop it down here. We're going to stop it down to f2.2. So f2.2, and let's go into 300% real quick. And I'm seeing little to no chromatic aberration, just a little bit here, just a little bit, but not a lot. And it's at 300%. It's like virtually impossible for you to actually pull this out in a real scale picture. This got to be from pixel peepers. But let's go back to f2 just real quick here. A little bit more chromatic aberration. As you can see, it's flaring up at you, kind of the purpley stuff. But when you stop it down from f2 here to f2.2, it starts to clear up.
All right, needless to say, guys, that was an amazing showing on the Canon R5 45 megapixels after what, 25 years of having this lens. This lens is one of the sharpest lenses even now today, because we have cheaper RF lenses that are not as sharp. I don't think the 85mm f2 is as sharp as the 135mm f2, but I have to give it a test. I haven't did any lens charts tests with the 85mm f2. Now, Canon does have a 135mm 1.8 RFL lens. I'm pretty sure it's a lot sharper than this one. Well, not necessarily a lot sharper, but definitely a little bit more functional and probably sharper on the edge. It's probably one of the sharpest 135s out there, but this is definitely still one of the best lenses you can get bang for your buck on the money end. All right, everyone, so we're back in Lightroom, and I just want to choose about 8 pictures that I got from the 135 f2. Now, while you're using the 135 f2, I noticed that f2.8 right here, even at f2.8, this background blur is a lot for me. Now, usually I like to use, your f1.2s, but that's at 85. I like the f2s, but that's at 85. I'm usually using an 85, or I'll be using a 105 1.4, and that's kind of my sweet spot with the background blur, and depending if that has good bokeh or not. But like, this is a lot of background blur for me. Although it's a little underexposed here, and I can just bump it up a little bit here just to show you guys. I like this image. This was one of my favorite images from the 135. I really liked it. Let's move on to the next image here. But like I said, it got right there on the eyes here. Eyes are nice and sharp, but she's turned directly towards the camera. So with eye tracking autofocus, it's a new technology for the RF lenses on the RF bodies, like the R5, the R6, the R6 Mark II, the R3, the upcoming R1, and the R5 Mark II. But with older lenses, they have older focusing engines. So what I learned while using the 135 f2 is that sometimes it hits focus and sometimes it doesn't. But this was another one of my images that I liked here. And don't mind, it was hot outside. We were just really trying to get it done. this is the time of year where we can work together, this kind of thing. So we was trying to work our best with the actual sunspots here, any kind of specular highlights. But like I said, here when she turned towards the camera, you know, nailed focus there. You got it at F2 now. Nailed focus there. Going to the fourth image here. Nail focus, even though she looked off camera, nail focus here. Yeah, that's nail focus there. And then even in a backlit situation where it's heavily backlit by some soft light, the focus is relatively good there. Now, when you're using the 135 f2, you don't have a lot of space to work with. So this wouldn't be my favorite lens if I didn't have a lot of space to work with. So if you're in situations where you can't control how much space you have from your clients, you're not taking a lot of portraits, and I would stay away from this lens. 85 is a sweet spot for like some iconic wedding pictures, but 135 could not replace 85 in my opinion. I think 135 is just a little tight. And you have more 85s at your disposal to purchase for a cheaper price. Let's go through the next image. This is another good image. I thought was halfway decent in focus because she closed her eyes. And so when you're using eye tracking autofocus, it reverts to like head tracking autofocus and stuff like that. And it made it easier on this lens. So when you're using lenses like these, you have to understand that the new technology is really, really fine-toothed. Like going through and doing eye tracking autofocus, you're likely to get the eye that's furthest away from the camera to be in focus versus the one that's closest to the camera. You know, and usually portrait photographers, especially shooting at the likes of f2, 1.8, 1.4, f1.2, all these apertures really, really put a lot of stress on the camera and the lens, specifically the lens and its focusing engine. So when it's doing micro adjustments and stuff like that, if you're doing back button autofocus, then you're able to actually keep utilizing that focus engine, but it puts a lot of stress on the lens because the lens is continually focusing where it wasn't really designed to continually focus and then focus so fine. And the camera and the lens at some point, because the lens can't move, you know, as quickly or as effectively or communicate as effectively with the camera, is more likely to lose focus just slightly. I'm not talking about hunting all the way to the background. No. I'm talking about maybe that little slight hit the nose or hit the cheek or hit the ear, then hit the eye that's closest in focus, even though the R5 will tell you that it is. Next image. I thought this image was really nice. I thought the pose was really nice. Kind of on the sexy side, but classy kind of thing. Yep. And you got this idea of shooting at f2 on an R5. Well, these new mirrorless bodies allow you to do these shallow depth of field shots without having to worry so much about focus. And I was using a harder light source. It was not the most soft light source. I'm using the Mag Mod Sphere XL on my Flashpoint Explorer 600. And even though I cleaned up all of this stuff in post, these are the images unedited, but I cleaned this up, I cleaned up the hand there. I thought this was a really nice image because you're able to see the shallow depth of field from the leading lines from the brick wall here. I know how much people hate using brick walls to photograph on, but it gives you a nice feeling of how much depth of field or how shallow the depth of field and how much compression you can get just by a window pane. Literally, she's standing inches from that window pane and you get a lot of shallow depth of field. So this is a great lens, guys. I love this lens. If anybody wanted to have a lens in their pocket to say, hey, I didn't have to spend that much on the lens, it's really great. This is a great lens. But if I were to give it a rating on how much it got in focus versus kind of out of focus at f2, it really matters a lot. So I'll probably give this like a 67 to 75-ish% of hit rate on the eyes when you're talking about f2. Now, since this is not a sports lens, so to speak, we're not going to be shooting a lot of sports pictures with this unless we can really predetermine our distances and all these other things. Since this is not a sports lens, this can be used at slower burst rates, which means you can go down to 7 frames per second, 5 frames per second, one shot if you wanted to, and do 1 frame per picture. So you got to understand that this is more useful without having it to be an RF lens. So adapting it, you're not really losing much because the way you're going to use this lens is really going to be one shot at a time. You get a blurry depth of field. Now, we got cheaper lenses that are still readily available. You can still find these in different places. And you can still get some great stuff, if not comparable stuff, with these older lenses. If you're doing sports, it might be a different story, but I find that some of these older lenses, even the Sigma 105 1.4, great lenses, they got a little age on them, but definitely look into these because you can really get a lot done without having to spend a lot of money. I'm Devin with Century FX Studios TV. What do you think about the 135mm f2 lens? Here's some sample shots. This is really just the first look.